Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, name is Bitchonistim. IDSF is the leading Israeli organization advocating for strong national security to defend Israel. It's a great pleasure and privilege to be joined today by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
General, I feel like a lot of things have happened here in Israel since you last joined the briefing, so let's just dive right in. What can you share with us?
Okay, I think that I want to start with the upcoming meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. President Trump extended an invitation to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and it's a short invitation, but three important things are written in this invitation. One is stating that the Israeli Prime Minister is the first foreign leader that is going to meet President Trump in the White House. This is a strong message saying you are our closest ally and we're meeting you first. And this is very important. The second statement is we're going to talk about peace, about prospects of peace. And I guess President Trump is referring to Saudi Arabia and normalizing relations and building an alliance, a Western Israeli Sunni alliance, to counter this Chinese, Russian, Iranian front that we're dealing with. The third message is also very, very important. It says we'll discuss countering our adversaries. So this, of course, has to do with Iran, Houthis, Hamas. So on one hand, there is talk about peace. On the other hand, there is talk about countering adversaries. And this means there is a clear understanding we're in a war. We need to win. And we need to deal with the enemies we are facing on all fronts. So I think this discussion is going to be very, very meaningful and important. President Trump has talked lately about moving Gazans to other countries, talked about Indonesia, talked about Albania, about Egypt, about Jordan. This is a serious thing. It's not something he's just talking about. It is a plan that is being discussed. It's obvious that Gaza is ruined. It's obvious that there is no future there. And these discussions are very serious and will impact what will happen in the future. As this is happening, we are in the midst of the ceasefire and returning the hostages. This ceasefire has many problems. We have the Gazans going back to the north, Hamas regrouping, they're getting a lot of aid, they're trying to challenge Israel along the perimeter, and Israel is reacting. But on the other hand, we're getting our hostages. And the big question is what will happen at the end of stage one. Stage one talks about 33 hostages. To say frankly, I'm not even sure we'll really get to the end of this stage and with all the hostages in our hands. It's not clear. Because in the last day of the deal, we're supposed to get around a third of the hostages. The last day. It's not clear. And I think that we have to take in account that at the end of this first step, we'll have to go back fighting fiercely, getting control of the humanitarian aid, doing other plans. I don't see Hamas willingly giving us all the hostages and surrendering, laying the weapons and getting out of Gaza, because this is basically what Israel is demanding for the next stages. All the hostages and the surrender of Hamas and them leaving Gaza. I don't see it happening without massive pressure of all kinds. And this is exactly the kind of discussion that Prime Minister Netanyahu needs to do with President Trump. How do we pressure them and also Qatar and Egypt in a way that will ensure that we win decisively? We get all the hostages and we also win against Hamas. And they leave Gaza or surrender, or give up. This is a serious issue. While this is going on, Israel is preparing for deciding who the next chief of staff will be. the next chief of staff, any of the candidates, I think they all understand that if they are chosen for one thing only, to win the war. And this is the main mission they have. Today I published an article talking about what is expected of the next chief of staff. And it's obviously building the right plans, bringing spirit to the army, appointing the right people. We want strong leaders. We want resolute officers who want to fight, who want to win, who have spirit. And we need a build-up of the force in the long term that will be relevant to the dangers of the future. Might be the Egyptian army, Turkish army. We don't know what the future holds, and we need to build a very strong army and really make sure that the draft is for everybody, and we have a big and strong army and capable of fighting on multiple fronts and not only one. And of course, building our industries in a way that can sustain the war and be dependent and not. So there are many challenges here we need to deal with, and we are working on them. So the army is planning for the next steps, and we'll see where this is going. As we're doing that, we're facing challenges in the north. We hit Hezbollah really, really badly, but Hezbollah is trying to challenge us along the border. The IDF is standing strong in Lebanon. We are constantly attacking there. Any attempt of Hezbollah to rebuild itself is answered by attacks of the IDF. I visited the north this week. I saw how the villages in Lebanon look. The IDF did a good job, and many of them are completely deserted. And we have a challenge really building our own towns and bringing back the people of Kiryat Shmona and the kibbutzim back home safely and rebuild their homes and security. I really hope that we'll see America more proactive with the Lebanese government to make sure that they really at the end dismantle Hezbollah and make sure that the Lebanese army is really effective and is built along the borders. As all this is happening, Israel is preparing very seriously to deal with Iran and to deal with the Houthis. And this will be a very serious discussion the Prime Minister will have with President Trump, how to deal with the challenge of Iran. So I think that when we talk about Hezbollah, it's not only about how the international community in Lebanon will deal with Hezbollah, it's also a question of how do we deal with the head of the snake. We need to cut the head of the snake. This is Iran. We need to hit them hard. We need to destroy their nuclear sites and military capabilities. And this will impact also all the proxies and also Hezbollah that is now pretty much isolated because Syria fell and Iran is not in Syria anymore. We are controlling the airspace and the sea and continuing to degrade them all the time, making sure they don't build themselves up again. Moshe?
General, thank you for sharing all of that. There seems to be this back and forth with Hamas that they are demanding humanitarian aid, and in the absence of humanitarian aid, they're going to hold off on returning hostages and prolong the war. So, are you able to elaborate a little bit on this strategy that I believe you're suggesting, that moving forward to really cut off humanitarian aid to Hamas? And how that will bring an end to the war as opposed to empower them to negotiate even harder.
So one scenario is that we negotiate the next stage of of returning hostages, and Israel says, okay, we'll extend the ceasefire, let's say, for another 2 months. You'll continue getting humanitarian aid, and we'll get our hostages. This is something that if Israel gets all the hostages, Israel, I would assume, will agree to, as long as we don't have to declare that the war is ending, because we are not going to agree to a reality like that. So there might be an extension of the ceasefire in order to bring back all the hostages. But realistically speaking, this is not something that I would assume will happen like that, because basically once we return back all the hostages and we are committed to win in the war, nothing will stop us from destroying Hamas. And Hamas knows that. It's not the only thing that's keeping Hamas alive is the hostages that they use and the humanitarian aid. Once we cut these two things, Hamas is done. So my question all the time: what Hamas hostages and so, and I don't see happening without massive pressure, withholding the humanitarian aid, disconnecting the people from the Hamas, and giving basic humanitarian aid only to the Gazan civilians and not to Hamas, and attacking fiercely Hamas. We need to do all these things, and maybe also embrace Trump's idea, saying, okay, you know what? We're going to open the Egyptian border and take everybody outside of Gaza. Or, I don't know, Trump might say, you know what, if you don't give the hostages, I will approve that Israel will annex all the north of Gaza to Israel. I mean, there are many out-of-the-box solutions for pressuring really seriously Hamas in a way that will be a game changer. And the way, when I listen to both President Trump and all his appointed officials, it seems that finally there is out-of-the-box thinking and clear understanding of who are the good guys and who are the bad guys, and the fact that we need to win decisively. And in this sense, I think that I'm optimistic that we'll find the right path. I think that soon enough, the administration will see that Hamas is not doing everything they want. Maybe they agree to the first stage. They're not going to agree so easily to the next one. And then we'll have to see what hell means and what kind of pressure are we going to put on them.
Now, when Prime Minister Netanyahu meets with President Trump, presumably the discussion is not just what is in Israel's best interests, but what is also good for the US. So, when discussing Iran as a global threat and a threat to the US, that seems pretty clear. But what incentive does the US have to really get its hands dirty, so to speak, with Gaza? How does helping Israel with Gaza advance the interests of the US at all?
So Hamas is Muslim Brotherhood. It's a danger not only to Israel, it's also a danger to Saudi Arabia. The Saudis want to see Hamas gone. Radical Islamism is a danger. Sunni Islamism is a danger to all moderate Sunni states. It's an existential threat for them. So there is a joint interest to really make sure that this entity is destroyed. And I think that Trump believes that really pushing a victory in Gaza and getting Hamas out of Gaza is a step towards regional peace and pushing peace with Saudi Arabia. And of course, on the other side, standing strong against Iran and attacking Iran also promotes peace with Saudi Arabia. So this is the motivation. We understand that there is a radical Shia axis and a radical Sunni axis. We need to deal with both of them, the Shia axis of Iran and the radical Sunnis, the Muslim Brotherhood, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, all these guys. And in order to deal with them, we need to build our own alliance, our American-Israeli moderate Sunni alliance.
I want to thank all of our viewers for sending in so many questions to review, to ask the General. So, General, for decades and decades and decades, Arab countries across the world have not really expressed great interest in taking in the population of Gaza. What would change right now? How would the Trump administration or Israel encourage, facilitate Egypt, Indonesia, any countries to finally open up their borders? Why now?
It's all about money. It's all about strengths. Egypt without American assistance will be in a huge problem. The same goes, we are talking about Jordan. And America doesn't tend to really use its power the way it can in order to push policies. And we saw it, for example, with Colombia when President Trump said, when President Trump said that he wants to move people to Colombia, and the Colombians said no. He said to them, "Okay, I'm putting a huge tax on you, and that's it." And they changed their mind in 5 minutes. So he knows how to put pressure, and I think that this is what's going to happen with Egypt and Jordan in other countries.
Thank you. One country we should try to speak about, Qatar. I'm sorry, the US and Qatar are very much strategic allies. Do you think Qatar will be part of this discussion when the Prime Minister speaks with President Trump?
I think that Qatar is a huge danger. They are Hamas on steroids. They are pouring endless amount of money on American universities and politicians, buying them off. Huge problem. And it's going to be a challenge how to really change the policies in the States in a way that they understand how dangerous this country is to the regional stability. They're in the same axis of Turkey. Turkey, Qatar are leading the radical Sunni axis. They are a danger. And I think that a lot of pressure needs to be put on them to really change the policies and help stabilize the Middle East because they are destabilizing the whole area.
Thank you. I want to switch topics if I can and talk about the Houthis for a second. And I know our time right now is short, so this might be our last question. The what is the status right now? Uh-oh, did I lose the general? General, you there?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, last question. The Houthis. As far as I understand, there have not been any recent ballistic missile attacks from Yemen to Israel. Are you able to kind of give us an understanding of what is happening right now on that front?
So basically, the Houthis, because of the ceasefire, as I said, at the moment, they're not shooting. They also went back to the terror list. They are, I would say, more deterred from the US and what will be their repercussions if they do shoot. But at the end of the day, we'll have to deal with them. We'll have to deal with them seriously, as we have to deal with Iran. And this is part of the discussions Israel is having with the administration, how to counter our adversaries. This is part of the discussion.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for joining the briefing today, for sharing all of this with all of our viewers. Thank you to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning in. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.